Hello, and thank you for tuning into this episode of Librari-ANTICS, brought to you by the Fairhope Public Library. My name is Ashanti, and today I am here with
Trista Lackey, and I am the reference department head here, and I'm glad to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us on this March episode, because today we are celebrating Women's History Month. So starting off with what's going on at our library itself, we not only highlight women storytellers at Fairhope Public Library, we also prioritize telling women's stories. So earlier this month, we actually hosted a screening of Sally's Ashes, which is actually an Oscar qualifying film, which is very cool for that to be coming out of here locally, but it was actually sponsored by the League of Women's Voters, which is really interesting, by the Baldwin County chapter, I believe. For background, if you don't know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that works to protect and expand voting rights for all people, basically to ensure that every person in our democracy is properly represented. The Baldwin County chapter has been active since the 90s, so it's really awesome that they wanted to partner with us to be able to show this screening. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the film itself as well.
Yeah, sure. The film follows 80-year-old Sally Smith, who, after a terminal lung cancer diagnosis, she rallies together with two of her friends. They're an unlikely team of fellow Alabamians, and they fight for the removal of toxic ash that's threatening the waters of our very own Mobile Bay.
That's really awesome to see these women, especially older women, getting out and fighting and really just doing whatever is necessary to be able to accomplish that goal. Thank you to everyone who attended that event, and to this wonderful community that continues to uplift these women so that we can continue providing that platform that is actually able to tell these stories. So if you're interested in more screenings, make sure you check out the Fairhope Public Library website to see when our next events are. So speaking of FHPL and women's history, I think it would be crazy for us not to mention the woman who actually made our positions at this library possible, Mrs. Marie Howland.
Yeah, Marie Howland is a very interesting person. She was a feminist. She was a free thinker. She was well ahead of her time. She lived back in the 1800s, and she would become the first head librarian of Fairhope Public Library, starting in 1900 and until her retirement in 1917. And she passed away in 1921, and her funeral was actually held in the library at the time. And she was born Marie Stevens in 1836 in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and she had to leave school in order to support her younger sisters after her father died in 1847. And then she worked as a mill worker at the age of 12. So that was pretty harrowing for her and her family. Can you imagine having to work as a mill worker or something else when you're that young?
I was still listening to One Direction, probably. Yeah, but thinking about what was expected of her at that time, for her to have to prioritize, not her education anymore, but having to look at that bigger picture, taking care of her siblings. That's really admirable.
Yeah, exactly. After she worked there, she went to New York City, and she graduated from the New York Normal College and became a teacher. And she was really interested in educating people. So she also became interested in sort of utopian free-thinking ideas. And she lived in a cooperative unity house with her first husband, Lyman Case. And then she met her second husband there in the unity house, and his name was Edward Howland. He was a Harvard graduate. He graduated in 1853 from Harvard, and he was also a columnist. And so they got married, and they lived, they were together from 1865 till his death in 1890. And he actually died in Mexico, where they had lived in a utopian society. They bonded over their shared interest of education, literature, and the collection of books. So they collected thousands of books over the years, and they got most of them in all their journeys, in living in different places like in France and in Mexico, New Jersey, and they traveled all over Europe in the 1860s. She published her first book in 1874, and it was called Papa's Own Girl. It was one of the books that a lot of people disagreed with, especially the Boston Public Library. It was actually banned from the library at that time. So yeah, she was always very ahead of her time, I guess.
Yeah. I was gonna say like really ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool to think about, especially so this book was released in like 1874. So for her to be like making that big of a splash, especially as like a female author, that's pretty, yeah, that's really interesting. Like historically kind of underrepresented group in history, and she's still having this profound impact even today that we see and that we of course honor in our library.
Yeah, exactly.
So really cool.
Yeah. She came here to Fairhope in 1898 after Fairhope was founded in 1894. It was founded by the single tax colony of Fairhope, Alabama, and she had this, she had a large grouping of books, thousands of books actually, and she decided to bring them here and start her library in her own home. So she had them all shipped here from the Midwest where they were stored. And we also, here in the library, in this room, we have the Legacy Collection, which has some of her books from that collection, the original collection.
That's why you have to study history, because if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. So
yeah,
definitely be sure to check out that Legacy Collection. I'm sure you can see someone at reference, either Trista or myself, and we can get that started and see. Wow, well, it's so important to keep seeking out these stories because, as aforementioned, they come from this group of people who has been historically, kind of underrepresented or unaccounted for in terms of their contributions to history, women. So we definitely want to take this time to celebrate some of our favorite female authors that are actually from Alabama. So I want to start with Zora Hurston, who is actually the author of one of my favorite books, Their Eyes Were Watching God. So she was born in, I think it was Natasuga, Alabama, like central Alabama, in 1891, and she spent most of her childhood in Eatonville, Alabama, actually. And in her quest for education, she kind of went all over the place. So she was in boarding school in Florida, and then she went to Baltimore, Maryland, to Morgan Academy in Baltimore, Maryland, and then she actually graduated from Howard University, my alma mater, in 1920. And then she graduated from Barnard College in 1928. But she was a playwright, she was a short story writer, a novelist, an activist. She was so many things. What I find most admirable about all of her work is that she prioritized telling those like Black Southern stories. She really prioritized uplifting those people, and she became a really influential figure in the Harlem Renaissance because she was one of the few people out of the South to be able to embody those stories. I always say that her books to me feel kind of like a memory, because it's so familiar and it's so relevant to anybody's, just relevant to the human condition, and that's what's so magical about reading and why I think you have to seek out stories that are from people who, yes, are like you, but also aren't like you, because it gives you that perspective. So
exactly.
Yeah. It was really cool.
Yeah, a different perspective. You understand people better, and you know that they're different, but they're very similar to you. We're all the same, basically, down inside. So, yeah, I think it's very important. And she was definitely groundbreaker, for sure.
Yeah. I would definitely like to hear more about one of your favorite Alabama authors as well.
Okay. Well, Catherine Tucker Wyndham was an author, a photographer, a folklorist, and a journalist. And she was born in Selma, Alabama in 1918, but she was raised in Thomasville, Alabama, where she started writing at the age of 12, doing movie reviews for the Thomasville Times, which is pretty interesting. 12 years old and she's doing that. That's amazing and cool. After graduating college, that was in 1939, she was a newspaper journalist in Montgomery and Birmingham, Alabama. And she married a man named Amasa Wyndham in 1946, and they moved to Selma, Alabama, where they raised 3 children. And so she kept writing, and she also was very interested in storytelling. In her storytelling appearances, she championed Alabama folklore and ghost stories in collections such as 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey, and went on to become the founder of the Alabama Tale Tellin' Festival, which is hard to say, which has been held annually in Selma since 1978. Wow. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And she worked with the Birmingham Public Library in 1982 to document the African American community of Gee's Bend, Alabama, which is very famous for their quilters and their beautiful quilts. So I think that's really just wonderful that she did that, and she worked with a photographer, and they collected all these pictures and documented it. It's very, very cool. And she had a great love of Southern culture and customs and recipes, and she wrote them down. She died in 2011, and after that she was inducted into the Alabama Women's Hall of Fame, and that was in 2015. And in 2018 she was inducted into the Alabama Newspaper Hall of Fame, and she was posthumously inducted into the Alabama Writers Hall of Fame. So she's very important to Alabama and the whole Alabama community and the world, really.
Yeah, I did not know that she was so influential in that Gee's Bend project. I remember seeing those like in the Museum of African American History in DC. To know that people in Alabama, specifically women, are able to have such a profound impact on the nation and on the world in general, it's just really inspiring to see. You know, they were more than writers, they were so many other things. So
right, I agree.
Well, thank you so much, Trista, for joining us on this episode. You know, this has been really awesome talking about all of these super profound women. Is there anything else you just want to leave our viewers with for this month?
Yeah, actually I do. We've got a couple new services here at the library. The first one is Craftsy, which you can get for free here at our library with your Fairhope library card. And Craftsy is a service that offers different classes, like all craft and art classes, like painting, even cooking, knitting, sewing, things of that nature. So it's awesome. And then our other service is called Biblio Plus, and that is where you can watch videos, like documentaries, TV series, movies for free with your Fairhope library card.
Wow, so, that is really cool. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. Be sure to check our YouTube channel pretty often, because we're gonna start uploading more of those tutorial videos, so hopefully people can learn how to use more of those online services.
Yes.
But thank you so much for sharing, Trista, and thank you for being here, and thank you all for listening to this episode of Library Antics, brought to you by the Fairhope Public Library. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and make sure you share this video.
Thank you. Bye.